What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. We just had another glorious weekend of football, which means it's time for my top 10 lessons learned video where I break down my top 10 lessons learned, observations, takeaways, whatever you want to call them, for the games we just watched and apply what we just learned moving forward from week 4 to week 5 of the fantasy football season. With all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Yes, stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen, she gon' let me.
Now, I'm going to be honest, all right? This has been one of the more frustrating last 3 hours. I want to get this video up much earlier than this, but, you know, one of the reasons we're trying to move out of the basement is my mom sprung on me, hey, we're getting your front door, the front door I'm looking at right here, replaced. And she just dropped that bomb on me like 3 hours ago. I'm like, I have to record. Like, I have things I need to do here. And, you know, sometimes your wishes just come second here. So things are coming out a little bit later today, and that's why. You can honestly blame Mother Stewart, but it's all good. It's all good. It's whatever. Let's get into top 10 lessons learned. And first up here, I wanted to cover what's on everybody's mind right now. My first takeaway is, it's not even a takeaway, really. It's just a thought. What is going on with the Bengals? We have this tweet from J.J. Zacharyson here. The Bengals are now dead last in the league in offensive touchdowns scored this year. I think that he tweeted before the Bengals have scored 3 offensive touchdowns this year. The Jets score a touchdown tonight, then Cincinnati will be alone and dead last. So they've just been awful. The Bengals have been awful. And as somebody that has, I promise that I understand what everybody's going through. Okay, I have Ja'Marr Chase to Joe Burrow in my home league. I'm 0-4 in the home league right now. I am. Now, I have full faith that we're going to climb back, get the 500, be frisky, maybe make the playoffs here. But I do understand the concerns with Ja'Marr Chase. I understand that people are frustrated with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, the entire thing, and I completely get it. But this is what I'll say, is the offense has been awful. But I do believe that better days are ahead. Okay, when we zoom out and we look at this season, I do think when it's all said and done, the Bengals will bounce back. They will be fine on offense. So what I will say is that moving forward, you're not starting Burrow. You're probably not starting T. Higgins. You're probably not starting Joe Mixon. I think Ja'Marr Chase is really the only one you can start moving forward. I think you kind of have to adopt a wait-and-see approach here. But I do think sooner than you'd think we're going to get better here. We have the injury expectations from Devon Achane here saying Joe Burrow expect limited continued limitations week 5. Yeah, so expect continued limitations in week 5. He said 3 sacks, 9 quarterback hits, won't be able to drop back or escape pressure for 2 more weeks. So he seems to think that we're almost seeing the other side of this thing. I know that Joe Burrow hasn't been playing great, and it's very concerning, but it's clear the calf injury is the issue, okay? As much as you want to say, oh, like Joe Burrow's lost it, he's lost his mojo, whatever, I just don't think it's possible. This is a quarterback who has been to a Super Bowl, has been at the top of the league the last 2 years just in terms of efficiency, completion percentage, amazing stuff. I do think better days are ahead here. And they just came off of a game versus the Titans. While the Titans have a poor pass defense, it's like fringe top 20. They do have one of the best D-lines in the entire league. What's his name? Jeffrey Simmons is an absolute dog. They get after the quarterback, and that's an issue for a guy like Burrow who right now can't move around in the pocket, and the offensive line's a little bit suspect. But what I will say is that just over the next 3 weeks, there is some reason for optimism here. There is some reason for optimism. Where when we look at EPA per play, which is expected points added, just on a per play basis, does a team do above or below what they're expected on a per play basis to contribute to points, right? How many points are you adding on a per drive basis over league average? And we look at their next 3 weeks, they have in Arizona. Now, Arizona's looked good on offense, but on defense, they've now allowed what? I think back-to-back 30 pieces, or no. They beat the Cowboys, but they allowed a 30 piece to the 49ers. The defense has been a little bit suspect for them. 27th in EPA per play allowed. Then they're at home versus Seattle, 28th in EPA per play allowed. And then they have a bye week. So that's 2 bottom 6 defenses we're playing here. Then a bye week. Now, again, we're not starting Burrow this next week against the Cardinals, but what I'm trying to say is that these are 2 easy matchups coming up. And then even if the Bengals can't get a get-right game in there, at least you then get a bye week for Burrow to get better, come into week 8. Presumably the healthiest he's been all year. So I understand the frustration. What I'll say is I'm pretty much sitting everybody besides Ja'Marr Chase. until they prove to us that they're back in business. But I do think that Joe Burrow and this offense will be clicking sooner rather than later, just because their immediate schedule is both soft and they have a bye week. So just something to monitor. Until then, I would find other plans for a T. Higgins replacement, a Joe Burrow replacement. We'll kind of see how that works later on in the week in terms of my weekly rankings and how far down I'll move Burrow. But I get it. It's been absolutely brutal to have any Bengals stacked teams right now. And I have more than a few, is what I'll say. Now, moving on from that, we have, is it time to panic on Calvin Ridley? I think we're just kind of starting off with a lot of panicking here because I think most of the questions I've been getting are, Ron, what's going on with this player? Is it time to panic? Whatever. So let's talk through Calvin Ridley real quick. And Calvin Ridley, people are concerned about him for good reason. He caught a touchdown, but he had just 2 catches. He had 11.8 PPR points, and he's not been great, right? Again, just 2 catches overseas in London. And since his week 1 explosion where he went absolutely crazy against, I believe, the Colts here, he has been just the wide receiver 61 over the last 3 weeks, whereas Christian Kirk has been the wide receiver 11 over the last 3 weeks. So I do 100% get the frustration. This is what I'll say, is I think the reason for this slump for Calvin Ridley is a couple of things. I think 1, it's luck. I think 2, it's a little bit of scheme here, where J.J. Zachariason actually points us out. I think it's a great little nugget here. The Jags have faced 2 teams who rank in the bottom 5 in man coverage rate this year entering week 4. Christian Kirk saw a 9.4% and 15% target share in those games. They faced 2 teams that rank the top 5 in the top 5 in man coverage rate this year. Kirk's target shares in those games, 34.1% and 40%. So pretty much what he's saying here is I believe that if it's a man coverage week, Christian Kirk gets used a ton versus man. They face 2 teams that rank in the top 5 in man coverage rate this year. Kirk's target share in those games, yeah. So when it's a man coverage heavy defense, they like rolling with Kirk, which I guess just out of the slot, he can sort of beat those nickel corners most of the time. It's been a little bit of that. It's also been a little bit of the Falcons defense this week. They are good. They are allowing the second least amount of fantasy points to perimeter wide receivers, courtesy of the 33rd edge, the edge tool they have. And they're also allowing the 26th most points to wide receivers. So they're a good defense. They also allowed the Lions, who just shredded the Packers. Dude, there's bugs down here now because it's like warm and we're a mess today. All right, we're just simply a mess today. But what I'm trying to say is that this Falcons defense is good. They held the Lions to 20 last week. They held this Jaguars team to like 20 after, the Lions erupted against the Packers. They also erupted against the Seahawks the week before that. So this Falcons defense has been pretty good. They've been holding teams to like not the most amount of points. The defense is very, very good. And Trevor Lawrence didn't have the best day of all time. He had 207 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Only really 1 receiver is going to get home in that kind of environment, and it happened to be Christian Kirk this week. So with Calvin Ridley, this is what it comes down to. Scheme has kind of set up Christian Kirk with those man coverage schemes. I think on top of it, he just needs to build rapport with Trevor Lawrence. And I think third, it's just a little bit of variance as well. I think you also just sort of have to temper your expectations. After week 1, it was like, oh my God, Calvin Ridley could be a top 6 wide receiver rest of season. I think now you just have to kind of cool off from that and just call him a high-end wide receiver too, which is kind of what you drafted him for, like in that Chris Olave range, right? Chris Olave hurt all of us this week, but we're not necessarily panicking on him. That's just kind of where we're at with Calvin Ridley. I think he's still a top 15 guy rest of season, but that super, super high-end ceiling that he kind of flashed in week 1, I don't know if that's going to be there over an entire week or over an entire season. Now, I do want to touch on the Falcons as well. We always have to cover the Falcons. This is still all in the second takeaway, all encompassing of the second takeaway here. But when we talk about the Falcons offense, to me, the environment was fine. They had 31 pass attempts this week, 17th in the NFL, so that's about average. They are 19th in offensive plays per game on the entire year. That's about average, so that's nice, right? We're passing the ball. We're not running at a really slow pace and slowing the tempo. We're getting to the line of scrimmage. We're running plays. You had Drake London get 7 targets and a touchdown. That'll do. Even though the yardage wasn't really there, 7 targets and a touchdown, that's completely fine in terms of usage. Then you have Kyle Pitts, who ran 80% of the routes. He had 4 targets, which was a little bit low, but the usage was sort of fine. I know Jonnu Smith is pretty annoying there, but he ran a bunch of routes, Kyle Pitts, didn't really get the targets. And I think to me, as much as this is a Arthur Smith issue, I think it's overarching a Desmond Ridder issue. This year, the amount of plays that they run, the amount of pass attempts they have is much higher than it was last year. The environment's actually not terrible. It's just that Desmond Ridder is one of the stone worst quarterbacks in the NFL right now, where if we compare him to Taylor Heineke in their starts right now, Desmond Ritter's career average in his starts is 181.5 passing yards per game. That's awful. Taylor Heineke's at 217. Passing touchdowns per game, he averages 0.63. Taylor Heineke averages 1.28, so about double the amount of touchdowns as Ridder. Yards per attempt, more. EPA per play, he's better there. Completion percentage over expectation. Desmond Ridder is minus 3.2%, so just based on his ADOT and what your completion percentage is assumed to be on that ADOT. He usually underperforms that by minus 3.2%, whereas Taylor Heineke actually overperforms that by plus 0.8%. So Taylor Heineke is the better quarterback. And the reason I'm showing this is I do think it's going to be Heineke's time sooner rather than later. Ridder was awful. He had the pick six, came out the exact next play, I think, threw another interception there. He was really, really bad. This is a good Falcons team with like legitimate playoff aspirations. So I'm not saying that Ridder is going to get pulled this week, but I have to think a change is coming. The way that I'm kind of looking at Kyle Pitts and Jake London until that change inevitably does come is I would just have Kyle Pitts as a boom-bust tight end at this point, with probably more busts than boom. But if you don't have like an Evan Ingram tight end or above, right, like Ingram, Laporta, Kittle's even been bad. Waller's been not great either. And then like obviously Hawkinson above. But most of the time, if you have Kyle Pitts, there's not really a better option out there on waivers anyway, so you just keep rolling him out, sadly. And then you have Drake London, who for me, you draft him to be a wide receiver 2. Now he's probably more of a high-end wide receiver 3 type of play here. Now moving on from the Falcons and that Jaguars game overseas, we have the Miami game, which I wrote down as the Devon Achane Takeover game. Now I do want to say, let's talk about Waddle first before we get into Devon Achane here. I know a lot of people are concerned about Waddle. This is what you have to understand. Okay, the Miami Dolphins have absolutely ran through the entire NFL, and then they met the Bills this week and put up just 20 points. Tua looked human, right? 1 interception, 1 touchdown, wasn't playing absolutely crazy football like he's been playing the last 3 or so weeks. But the Bills defense is really good. They have the 3rd best drop back EPA per play defense, which means they have the 3rd best pass efficiency defense behind just Dallas and Cleveland. This is a legit pass defense team. Now, Tre'Davious White got hurt, but in this game, they were amazing. So pretty much the Bills, their game plan was that they were going to make the Dolphins beat them on the ground. They completely shut down everything. And the reason why I'm not concerned about Jaylen Waddle at all is because Tyreek Hill didn't get home either. Jaylen Waddle actually had, I believe, more catches than Tyreek Hill in this game. They both have 4 targets. They both ran 30-plus routes. The game got out of hand towards the end there. There's really nothing to take away besides hats off to this defense. The defense played absolutely amazing by the Bills. I think that better days are to come for the Dolphins. I know it sucks. I know you keep playing Jaylen Waddle. He doesn't come home. He doesn't get home. And it's like, man, that sucks. I'm losing games because Jaylen Waddle isn't popping off here. But better days are ahead. Better days are truly ahead. He had more snaps than Tyreek Hill. They both had 4 targets. Again, neither of them really got home. Braxton Berrios had 6 targets, and I think 1 that was garbage time, and I think 2 that was also part of the Bills' scheme of just making anyone not named Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle beat them, which is why I think Braxton Berrios got a touchdown, which is why I think Devon Achane had such a great day. It seemed like that was the plan. I would imagine moving forward, Jaylen Waddle will go back to being the 1B to Tyreek Hill's 1A, and this offense will kind of get back to what they were doing before that. Now, we also have the Devon Achane takeover, where this is a great tweet from Dwayne McFarland. Devon Achane was the number 1 running back for the Dolphins in Week 4. He had 66% of the snaps, 42% of the rush attempts, 68% route participation. That was huge because last week, Raheem Mostert actually ran more routes than Devon Achane. Have I been saying Achane this entire time? Achane. Devon Achane. 68% route participation, so that's massive. Anything over 60% is huge. So Devon Achane is now being explosive. He's getting carries. He's getting more snaps than Mostert, and he's getting routes and targets. That is all absolutely massive. Now, people are going to say, well, this game got out of hand. Achane just salted things away. And I would say, no. I would say, look at the bottom of this tweet from Dwayne McFarland. He pretty much broke down the snap percentages by quarter. Now, Raheem Mostert had more snaps than Achane in the first quarter. And I'll say, you guys will say, 62% plus 58%. That doesn't equal 100. There's some formations and personnel packages where both running backs are going to be out there on the field at the same time. So, Mostert actually led in the first quarter. Then, second quarter, Achane had 57% to Raheem Mostert's 43%. Then in the third quarter, 57% to Raheem Mostert's 28%. Then the fourth quarter is actually when Mostert had 39% to Achane's 11%. So what this looks like to me is it was about even coming into the game. Then second quarter and third quarter, Achane took over, and then to salt the game away when it was already out of striking distance, Mostert then got back in the game. So what this signals to me is it's wheels all the way up for Devon Achane. I think if you wanted to put him as a top 12 running back rest of season, it really wouldn't be that crazy to me. He got home this week on like less than 15 touches. He's explosive. He's in a great offense. Mike McDaniel knows how to use him. Achane is someone to be very, very excited about moving forward because, again, he's getting all the touches we want. He's getting targets. He's getting rushes. He's leading the team in snaps. Now, of course, Jeff Wilson's going to come in and make this a little bit more of a three-headed backfield, but there's really no firm take of when Jeff Wilson returns, if he's going to be any kind of a factor in this backfield, and if he is, I think the guy that he takes away from is Mostert before it's Achane. So we'll see how things go, but Devon Achane wheels all the way up. Now, on the other side of that game, the Bills side, we have James Cook got a goal line carry, but at what cost? And people were victory lapping the hell out of this on Twitter, saying, oh, but I thought James Cook couldn't take goal line carries. Here's the thing. They were running hurry-up offense. Latavius Murray, I believe, was in there for a bunch of plays. He was clearly winded. He comes off. James Cook is in there and hurry up. And while they're just trying to run no huddle, James Cook ended up being the guy on the goal line. I don't think that it was really purposeful or schemed, but people are going to run to best case scenario. I don't think that he's now the presumed goal line back. But he did show that he can now mix in on the goal line, which I think is important. But as much as this was a blowout game, and that's probably why things were a little bit more split, James Cook's usage was pretty concerning here. Now, 41% of the snaps, maybe you can say, well, they got out to a big lead, and that's a little bit over the top because of that game script. But the issue is 31% of the routes, so he lost a lot of the routes to Latavius Murray here. Only 4% target share. That's not great either. And the inside the 5 attempt thing, right? So this is the utilization report from Dwayne McFarland. He does an amazing, amazing job. I was shocked that they actually update this by Monday morning. But you can see the short down and distance snaps, right? So SDD is like your 3rd and 2 and stuff. And that's clearly where they don't prefer James Cook. And that usually kind of tells us what we can expect for the inside the 5 attempts. So, yes, James Cook got 100% of the inside 5 attempts, but on the entire season there you can see he's only at 27%. Now, long down and distance snaps, he got none of them, 28% on the entire season. 2-minute drill snaps. I don't think anybody got 2-minute drill snaps because they didn't have any 2-minute drill snaps anyways, but it's just a little bit concerning that the routes went down, the targets went down, the snap percentage went down, where on the season he's averaged 56%, this went down to 41%, so just keep an eye out. If this becomes a true 3-headed backfield where Damian Harris is truly in the mix, that's an issue. If this becomes Latavius Murray being the preferred veteran out there in long down and distance, 2-minute drill, and he gets the inside the 5 work, that's going to be pretty brutal for James Cook to overcome. So I wouldn't sound the panic alarm just yet, but it is very concerning. We'll see how this looks next week. It could have just been a game script thing. But on the entire game, James Cook just had 12 carries, 29 yards, a touchdown, and 1 target. So really not a great game outside of the touchdown. Now, moving on to that, we have the Deebo disappearing act. Aiyuk comes back into the mix, and Deebo has nothing to show for it. He had just 3 carries, 0 targets. I think a lot of people are going to be panicking, just kind of, again, the overall theme of the beginning of this video. But it's just kind of the nature and what you can expect of this 49ers offense, where Deebo is coming off a rib injury, and you're not going to get all 4 of Kittle, Aiyuk, McCaffrey, Deebo to get home in every single week, especially in a week where McCaffrey has 45 and Aiyuk has a 20-plus crazy 6 for 146 game. There's just not enough to go around in a positive game script like that against a Cardinals team that didn't really put up. I mean, they put up a little bit of a fight, but it wasn't anything too crazy. So again, it's tough to expect Deebo to get home in that environment. Now, what I'll say is, like, it's not great that Deebo's had his best games without Aiyuk here, but it's by no means like a death sentence or anything. We've had weeks 1 and 2 where Deebo Samuel had a 23% target share, a 38% target share, and then week 4 is 0% target share. 0% target share obviously isn't going to stick. Sub 20% target share is not going to stick. They're both probably, I would imagine Aiyuk probably hovers around like 25% plus, and Aiyuk hovers around 25% plus target share, and then Deebo hovers around 20% plus target share with carry. So Deebo to me is still going to be fine, but in games with Aiyuk, Deebo goes from like a high-end wide receiver 2 to probably more of like a mid-range back-end wide receiver 2, and they both probably hover around that area. And to me, that's fine. They have a much more competitive game script where they'll probably have to lean on Deebo versus the Cowboys. Again, remember, Deebo's coming off the rib injury that he aggravated on Thursday night. Now, we also have on the other side of that game that I did want to touch on was Josh Dobbs, man. How about Josh Dobbs? I mean, he goes out here. The 49ers in EPA per play allowed by week, right? So that's just their defensive ranking, defensive efficiency, 28th in week 1. So like the higher the number, the better, right? So 28th, 24th, 26th, and then the Cardinals had the 7th best EPA per play offense this week. I mean, against the 49ers defense, that is so impressive. Even Stafford just had the 24th best EPA per play as an offense versus the 49ers in week 2. Josh Dobbs comes out here, looks amazing, 28 for 41, 265 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks, plus 1.8% completion percentage over expected. I mean, that is insane. Like, I think that there's truly going to be a decision to be made when Kyler Murray comes back. I think Kyler Murray's going to come back. I think Kyler Murray ends up starting games for the Cardinals at some point, but I don't know that it's just going to be instantaneous of just, the minute Kyler Murray's back, he's going to be the starting quarterback. I don't know. Maybe they end up trading Dobbs or they trade Kyler Murray or do something among those lines, but he's been amazing, which has now led to Marquise Brown being extremely usable. He got 10 targets and was great in this game. Michael Wilson looked great. We'll touch on him in a second with the rookie wide receiver report. Zach Ertz had like 10 targets and was usable. I mean, he is making something out of nothing when it comes to this Cardinals offense. I just have nothing. It's just shocking. It's just very impressive what Josh Dobbs is doing out here. Now, after that, we have the world famous rookie wide receiver report as seen on TV. I don't know why I say all that, but it is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. As you can see right here, Underdog Fantasy, they have these free specials on their Pick'em platform every single primetime game where you go higher on Geno Smith over higher 0.5 total yards. That's obviously going to cash, and you can string those together with other pick'ems, higher or lowers on Underdog's projections, and you can string them together for a nice little pick'em slip to sweat for those games where I think if you get 2 right, it's times 3. If you get 3 pick'ems correct, you get like times 6 on your money. It's just a nice little sweat. I don't know what I just said there, but it's a nice little sweat to have for the primetime games if you got nothing else really to watch, or if you just want to kind of make some money real quick and sort of see what's going on. I know that we had a decent week on our stats and starts video when it came to these pick'em slips. I'm trying to see if anything else sticks out. Yeah, you can go higher on Kenneth Walker rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown. You can go higher on Kenneth Walker 2 receptions. You can go higher on Jack Charbonnet 22.5 rushing yards, or lower if that's more your thing. But yeah, if you string them together, I believe if you string 2 together, it pays out 3x. If you string 3 together, it's 6x. If you string 4 together, it's 10x. And if you string 5 together, it's 20x. So feel free, have some fun on Thursday Night Football. If you use promo code Ron, they will match your first deposit up to $500. That's only until October 4th. Up to $500. They will match your deposit. Remember, promo code Ron. There'll be a link in the description. In the comment section down below, you click it. It'll take you to Underdog Fantasy. It'll use promo code Ron. You can have some fun on the Pick'ems. You can have some fun on Best Ball Resurrection, where now they have season-long Best Ball contests that take place from week 6 through week 17. So you can get back in on the fantasy football action if you're out there and you're down bad. When we talk about the rookie wide receiver report here, we have every rookie wide receiver that has 35 routes or more ran. I'm gonna put my face in the top quarter real quick. Hold on. Where did I just put that? It's a little bit behind baseball here. There she is. All right, perfect. I just wanted to put my face somewhere so you could just like actually see me talking here. And then we'll just make this camera. Boom. We're in here like swimwear. All right, so let's talk about Puka Nacua first overall. So we're just going to talk through them as we go. Again, these are any rookie wide receiver with 35 or more routes. They are sorted by PFF receiving grade. You have pass snap percentage by week, so that's just the percentage of passing downs you're out there for. Damn. I didn't update Puka Nacua and Trey Palmer because they played on Monday Night Football. I really should have done that. That's my bad, just in terms of their pass snap percentage. But it's not too, Puka Nacua is out there for everything. Trey Palmer, who really cares? But target per route run, we want pretty much anything over 20% is good. Anything over 25% is elite. Yards per route run, and I would say 2 is really the threshold we're looking for. Anything over 2 is elite. And then PFF grade, anything over 80 is elite. Anything over 70 is good. Now, when we talk about Puka Nacua, he's just been on an absolute heater, man. Absolute heater. He now has the most fantasy points ever scored for a wide receiver in his first 4 starts ever. He is showing that he is a guy in the NFL. He is, to me, a wide receiver 2 rest of season. When it comes to redraft, he is probably a wide receiver 2 as it pertains to Dynasty at this point. Only thing I'll say only thing I'll say, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade because I am very excited about what this could be, but I just want to say that first 4 PPR points isn't the end-all, be-all, right? Your PPR points in your first 4 games, it's a good indicator, but it does not say, okay, this guy's going to be a huge future Hall of Famer, this guy's going to be in the Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase tier as a player. I'm just saying do not get too carried away because on this list of highest scores in their first 4 weeks, yes, you have Anquan Boldin, you have Stephon Diggs, you have some really good players on here, but it's not a perfect list, right? You have Martavis Bryant, you have Calvin Benjamin, you have Deion Branch, you have Chase Claypool, Eddie Royal, Will Fuller. I mean, these are good players, but I'm just saying before we anoint Puka Nacua the next, I don't know, top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, I would just pump the brakes and say, okay, what he's doing right now is special, but let's see what this looks like when Cooper Kupp comes back over an entire season. Regardless of Puka Nacua, absolute monster, probably the rookie wide receiver 1 right now when it comes to Dynasty. If I had to guess, I would say either him or I'd put him in a small tier, like the same tier as like Flowers and JSN right now. Now, moving on from Puka Nacua, we have Marvin Mims. Just let Marvin Mims cook. Like, Sean Payton is so annoying for this. Like, I don't know what Sean Payton is doing over there. You have Marvin Mims, at least the routes are climbing, right? 12%, 28%, then 34%. The slowest of slow climbs here, Sean Payton, but they are getting there. Just bear with me, fellas. Marvin Mims, the routes, they're going to go up. I don't know why it's so damn slow to get up here. I don't know why we're running Brandon Johnson over Marvin Mims, but he is giving them no choice but to put him on the field. He now has the 4th most receiving yards among all rookie wide receivers, despite his highest snap percentage is 34%, and he's 4th among all rookie wide receivers in receiving yards, and he's 1st on the Broncos in receiving yards, playing just about 1/3 of the receiving snaps. Get him on the field. I don't know. I truly don't understand, but the per route stuff is amazing. He's commanding targets, 28.2% yard target per route run, 6.21 yards per route run. It's something I've never seen held over a 4-game sample. 86.2 PFF grade. That is a serious PFF grade. 86.2, I believe, is higher than what Garrett Wilson had last year, and he led Drake London and Chris Olave. Now, obviously, I don't expect Mims' PFF grade or any of these per route stuff to hold over an entire season, but he's good. We just need him to play more on a bigger sample to sort of understand how good Marvin Mims is. Now, moving on from that, we have Rashee Rice. He had a tough matchup versus the Jets, but it's nice to see that the 53% pass snap percentage wasn't just because they blew out the Bears. It was because he's moving up the depth chart, right? This was a competitive game versus the Jets. 52% of the snaps is nice. Didn't really do much against the Jets, but his per route stuff still holding strong. Then you have Zay Flowers. Didn't do much here, but he played against the Browns, who have like arguably the best defense in football. He's fine. He's earning targets. He's the Ravens wide receiver 1. That's all good. Then we have Tank Dell. It just so happened to be a Nico Collins game. They're not all going to get home every week, similar to the 49ers, right? You're not going to have all of Dalton Schultz, Robert Woods, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dameon Pierce get home every single week. Tank Dell at this point, over 80% of the snaps the last 3 weeks. Yards per run is good. PFF grade is fine. He's fine, all right? He's not an elite player, but he looks like a solid rookie here. Then we have Michael Wilson, who I think is the biggest story here. He has just his 2nd straight week of having a 75% plus snap percent. Now, what I will say is I would pump the brakes ever so slightly. There's a lot of optimism for Michael Wilson right now, but what I'll say is he had 7 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. So his points per game is going to be inflated by those touchdowns. What I'll say is this. I think he had 1 game early on in the season where he had like 1 huge catch as well. So his yards per run's a little bit inflated. His targets per run isn't great. His PFF grade is fine. So what I say all that to say is that he's getting on the field, which is good. He's producing, which is good. But for right now, he looks kind of like an average rookie wide receiver. Like nothing else, nothing too crazy. But I will say for a guy that you probably got 4th round of rookie drafts, or like last round of your redraft leagues, like he's doing well. I just wouldn't anoint him to like the Tank Dell and above area of like actual fantasy producers just yet. Now, after that, we have Jayden Reed. He's now had 5 targets in every game so far, but his snap percentage did come down with Christian Watson back in the mix. I'm optimistic long term, but I don't think that he's going to be startable in fantasy with Christian Watson coming back. Christian Watson was, I think, like 4th in routes, but he's going to climb up to a spot where he then displaces Jayden Reed, which makes him tough to start in redraft, but Dynasty, I'm actually pretty optimistic about Jayden Reed. Then we have Demario Douglas, part-time player, but kind of looks fun. I mean, it's a small sample, just something to monitor, but the target per out run for Demario Douglas, the yards per out run for him, both solid, and the PFF grade is about average, so that's fine. You have Josh Downs. He's running more and more routes every week. The per route stuff isn't efficient. He's commanding some targets, but it does seem like he's playing his better football with Gardner Minshew, so just something to look at. Then we have Jordan Addison here, who actually just had his first week where he went down in pass snap percentage, which isn't great. He kind of reminds me of early season Jahan Dotson last year, where Jahan Dotson looked really good early because he was running a lot of routes and he was scoring touchdowns. But on a per route basis right now, Jordan Addison, the yards per run and targets per run are a little bit concerning. But what I will say, rookie wide receivers, they take time. I wouldn't say that Jordan Addison can't play at this point. He showed some flashes and stuff. We would just like a little bit more per route efficiency here and a little bit of a better PFF grade. Starting to get concerned on Addison just a little bit, and not even concerned in the way that he's going to be a bust, but concerned in a way of he might just be. And don't get me wrong, Jahan Dotson's fine, right? He's like a wide receiver. He's like a top 30 dynasty wide receiver. He's like a wide receiver, low end wide receiver 3 in redraft, and that's fine. But when you drafted Addison, you thought maybe he had the ceiling of being your next, Calvin Ridley type, like smooth operator, Chris Olave type, right? So that upside of being the next Chris Olave, smooth operator, Calvin Ridley, the more that Jordan Addison can't do elite things on a per route basis, the more the likelihood of hitting that ceiling and just becoming, your Jahan Dotson, more of a, 1B in an offense, kind of grows. So just something to monitor with Jordan Addison. I think his ceiling is starting to get a little bit affected here. Now, after him, we do have so Jalen Hyatt plays Monday. You then have Dontavion Wicks, Trey Palmer, Kayshon Boutte. All non-factors for right now. You can kind of throw them out. I will say Trey Palmer played the most snaps he's played so far because Mike Evans went down, but there's nothing really to see there. Then we get Quentin Johnston, the man of the hour. He gets a huge bump, right? You have Mike Williams go down. He goes from a 27% snap percentage to a 77%, which is huge. Playing time was there, but he had just 3 targets, 1 catch, 18 yards. Not great. What I will say is I think just getting on the field is encouraging. First game out there, not having a monster game, not anything too crazy there. He's still having 18.3% target per run is just fine. I would say, it's just under a guy like Tank Dell. And I do think better days are to come here. He gets a week 5 bye. We've seen a lot of the time, the post-rookie bye or the post-bye rookie jump where bye week happens, the rookie comes out and kind of ascends a little bit. I still think that's in the range of outcomes for Quentin Johnston. I think they can kind of work over the bye with ways to scheme him up touches, get him involved in the game. It's also a game versus the Raiders where they were up the entire time. It was never really in question versus the Raiders. So we'll see what this looks like moving forward, but I am optimistic on Quentin Johnston. I wouldn't just panic yet. I would like a bigger sample of him being this involved in the offense. Now, moving on from the rookie wide receiver report, I wanted to touch on the rookie quarterbacks real quick. Now, I don't think we've seen enough of Bryce Young to really make any claims, because with quarterbacks, you have to be so patient, right? Trevor Lawrence was awful his rookie year, and now Trevor Lawrence is amazing. Let me also take that down. So, Bryce Young hasn't put the best stuff on tape or stuff on field, but he's playing in a pretty brutal offense where the Panthers playmakers are pretty terrible. So I wouldn't have any concrete takeaways yet, unless we look up in week 8 and we look at like his EPA efficiency and it's like as bad as a Josh Rosen or something, then maybe we should sort of see what's going on there. But I wouldn't panic just yet on Bryce Young. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to highlight the 2 quarterbacks that are really flashing right now. This quarterback class looks special. When we look at the quarterbacks in their first 3 starts, sorted by fantasy points. Now, this is similar to Puka Nacua. It doesn't mean that Anthony Richardson is going to be a bona fide stud, right? You do have Tim Tebow on this list, but this is a great list to be a part of, right? Where it's in terms of most fantasy points to a rookie quarterback's first 3 games, you have Robert Griffin III, Jalen Hurts, Tebow, Aaron Brooks. So this is since 2000 as well. Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, then Patrick Mahomes, then Taysom Hill, then Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor, Dante Culpepper, Case Keenum, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. So it's a decent list to be a part of here, and it's crazy, man. He's scoring a lot of fantasy points. He is the QB3 in points per game, despite being under 50% completion percentage this past week, despite also missing the second half of his second start. So if he played in the second half of his week 2 game, he might be up there with Robert Griffin III. Like, he is just an absolute monster. Like, him being the QB3 in points per game right now is huge, right? We've seen guys who were really good prospects like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence come into the NFL and not produce right away. Now, is that a death sentence? No. But just coming onto the field and scoring fantasy points right out the gate, that is huge. Like, that is massive. And Anthony Richardson is already there scoring top 5 fantasy points per game. And things are only going to get better in this scheme with Shane Steichen as Richardson kind of settles into the offense a little bit more. I'd be very excited if I was an Anthony Richardson bag holder in redraft, dynasty, if I was a Colts fan. The Colts having Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson, absolutely huge. I think that they're moving in the right direction as well. And then they almost came back versus the Rams as well. Really good game from them. And then you have CJ Stroud, where like the Texans, I would be over the moon. If I was a Texans fan, like they look amazing. Will Anderson looks good. Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator from the Shanahan tree, looks amazing. You have CJ Stroud now, who in his first 4 games has 1,212 passing yards. I mean, this top 5 list, fellas, this is rookie quarterbacks in their first 4 starts, sorted by passing yards in your first 4 starts since I believe like 2000. It is Cam Newton, CJ Stroud, Andrew Luck, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if CJ Stroud ends up anywhere on the spectrum of these quarterbacks in terms of fantasy points scored, I mean, he's going to do amazing. You can also see as well, Andrew Luck and Cam Newton had below a 60% completion percentage. CJ Stroud has over that in completion percentage. He also has 6 touchdowns, 0 picks. All of these guys have already thrown picks through 4 games. Like CJ Stroud, man. I mean, he looks really good. He looks really, really good. I would be over the moon. Again, same thing. Redraft Dynasty Texans fan, I would be over the moon about all of the CJ Stroud stuff. I'll also say CJ Stroud is the QB 10 in fantasy points, so he's not quite the thing that's exciting about CJ Stroud. I think both of these guys, CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, are top 15 guys in dynasty startups at this point. The difference is that Anthony Richardson's more so like early career Jalen Hurts, where it's like, man, this guy is an absolute game breaker, QB1 overall in fantasy upside, but is he consistent enough as a thrower to be a long-term starter? Now, the jury is completely out on that with Anthony Richardson. I think as of right now, he's showing some positives, but the completion percentage isn't also where we want it to be just yet. But we did just see those numbers, right? We see those numbers here. Andrew Luck and Cam Newton, both sub 60% completion percentage. I believe Anthony Richardson's in that same exact range. So just something to think about there. But again, we won't know. Now, CJ Stroud's on the other end of that spectrum, where he's almost like your Joe Burrow, where the QB1 overall upside isn't exactly clear because the rushing upside isn't there. But CJ Stroud looks like he's very much on his way to becoming one of these elite franchise quarterbacks that just, every week, top 6 quarterback finish, just turn it in. Just, one of these really good quarterbacks that can just, just based on name value, being consistent every single year, can elevate his dynasty value in that way. So to me, if you have either of these guys in dynasty, I am holding on or I am buying if anybody out there doesn't know what they have in a Stroud or Richardson. Because again, if a startup was today, I would have both of these guys as top 15 picks. Then we have our 8th takeaway, Jahmyr Gibbs therapy session here is what I wrote down. Now, I want to give a shout out to Noah More Parties. I think a lot of you guys know him from the BDGE channel. This is his website. Make sure you check it out, noahmoreparties.com. He is really, really good at running back analysis. He does other stuff. This is a free article, so I have no shame in sharing this. But he wrote this article after the Thursday night game. Stop freaking out about Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think he hit the nail on the head here. And I think a lot of people sort of, I'm going to be honest with you guys, before we even get into this article, look, we drafted a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs. This channel has been pro Jahmyr Gibbs. And I have to be honest, man, I talked about it on the Friday live stream where we did rest of season drafts, but my fellow Gibbs brethren embarrassed us on Thursday night. The kind of tweets that were out there of calling for Dan Campbell's job and calling for just completely, coming like saying like there were genuine takes out there saying the Lions front office, the coaches should all be fired of the way that they've been misusing their 12th overall pick. Well, here's the thing. They're winning football games. It was the 4th game of Jahmyr Gibbs' career, and he didn't have a good night. He straight up did not have a good night, Jahmyr Gibbs. Players are off sometimes. He did not have a good game. Week 1, he looked electric. He looked electric versus the Chiefs. Week 4, if you were watching that primetime game, Jahmyr Gibbs was a borderline liability. There was a play, I think it was like the last drive or something for the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs runs a little button hook out of the backfield. He slips on his own feet and he didn't catch the ball. He was just making rookie mistakes, and that's kind of what happens. That's just simply what happens. You can't just point to David Montgomery and say, oh, he has a less yards per carry than Jahmyr Gibbs. He shouldn't be getting all this volume. Now, it's a little bit frustrating, right? We would want more volume for Jahmyr Gibbs for sure. But one, David Montgomery's yards per carry is going to be a little bit lower because he gets goal line carries, so the upside, right? I mean, there might only be 2 yards to gain on some of those carries. And then on top of that as well, David Montgomery has like 25 pounds on Jahmyr Gibbs. You don't want Jahmyr Gibbs getting rammed between the tackles. That's not the touches we want. We want the scheme stuff. We want the outside zone stuff. We want the receiving work. And this was a game that the Packers were losing the entire time. The Lions were winning the entire time. They got out to a big lead early. They were never in comeback mode, having to pass the ball a ton. That just wasn't how they had to win the game. That's how you get David Montgomery to 30 rush attempts. It just wasn't the game script for Jahmyr Gibbs. So everybody just calm down with Gibbs. When you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, it wasn't for his week 1 through 4 production. It was, let's draft a rookie, and by the end of the season, maybe he figures out a nice role and becomes an absolute stud. And I still believe those things for Jahmyr Gibbs. So if anybody out there is panicking on Jahmyr Gibbs, I did want to sort of highlight this article. Stop freaking out about Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I also want to preface, Noah isn't even a big Jahmyr Gibbs fan. He's not. He said he has like an article from April 2022, critical of Gibbs. Like, he's never really been, from February, pushing back against the still common Alvin Kamara comparisons. Like, he's never been big on Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, he said he ran this this morning after Gibbs ran the ball 8 times and played fewer standard down, passing down, and goal-to-go snaps than the fresh off the injury report David Montgomery did on a night the latter. Also posted career highs in carries, touches, and touchdowns. Some people are tilting. Some people are on their high horses to push back against people who are tilting. And I say this with the awareness that such a statement, second, is very high horse-ish. Most in both groups are missing the point in some way or another. So what I will say is you should read this entire article, but I'll get down to this spot where he said, now for the tilter. So this is for anybody that's out there tilting on Jahmyr Gibbs. He said, I think Gibbs managers, perhaps in redraft as well as in Dynasty, who are frustrated by his lack of early season usage, had unreasonable expectations, or are prisoners of the moment, or both. Through 4 games, Gibbs has played 43% of the snaps, averaging 9.8 carries and 3.5 receptions for a combined 13.3 touches per game, and has earned a 13.7% target share. Not only is that piece of the target pie on pace to be an 88th percentile mark among backs in the last 7 years and higher than those for all but 9 runners in 2022. But if those other rates hold for all 17 games, Gibbs would finish with the year with 167 carries and 60 receptions, marks matched by just 24 running backs in the last 10 seasons. Other perhaps, I don't know what that word is, backs had the following usage numbers through 4 games in their own rookie season. So you can see, so this is through 4 games, these other guys. Alvin Kamara also got off. It's like he got touchdowns, but in terms of his usage, it wasn't that great. It was just 8.8 points per game. McCaffrey, also 13.3 touches per game, 13.3 touches per game. So these are the running backs that he's on. I believe that these are, so other perhaps backs had the following usage numbers through 4 games in their own rookie season. So he's just kind of showing other receiving backs and what they looked like in their own rookie seasons. DeAndre Swift was amazing, and he had just 6.3 touches per game in his first 4 games. If you remember, DeAndre Swift was a top 15 running back in points per game in his rookie year. David Johnson as well, Travis Etienne as well, Breece Hall also 13.3 touches, 14% target share. Like, just calm down. What he's saying here is basically Gibbs is right on schedule for how we should expect a highly drafted dual threat running back to be used early on in his career. And I even agree that the Lions could and probably should be doing more with him, especially in the passing game, because he looks so good, which should further encourage you as a fantasy owner. There's room to grow here, and the rookie seasons of guys like Kamara and David Johnson show us that light early season usage, even from non-first rounders, can grow into late league-winning second halves in fantasy. In other words, chill out. For real, chill out. If you have Jahmyr Gibbs, chill out. Like, genuinely. If by week 9 or 13 I haven't seen any bump in Gibbs' playing time or in the repertoire of things he's being tasked as a wide receiver, I'll start reassessing my confidence level in his potential to produce like an RB1 during his rookie contract, because, as I said above, his unique skill set means his value is particularly dependent on proper usage. But 4 weeks does not a career make, and this particular 4 weeks shouldn't really even be viewed as some sort of letdown. I took him in a home keeper league and wish he was scoring more fantasy points right now too, but Gibbs was my RB2 in this rookie class, a mid RB1 in Dynasty, and a guy I expected to be able to lean on in the second half of the season and redraft leagues prior to kickoff in week 1, and he's still my RB2 in this rookie class, a mid RB1 in Dynasty, and a guy I expect to be able to lean on in the second half of the season and redraft leagues today. And it's a situation worth monitoring, but nothing I've seen so far has changed my mind regarding anything I thought about Gibbs and the Lions this offseason. I don't think anything should have. I mean, just absolutely well said. Just well said for him. Again, I'll link the article down below. Again, this is from a guy who didn't really he didn't really love Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of school, but he says what I'm thinking as well is that through 4 games, we have not seen enough of just awful usage or awful games to then, reroute our brain of a guy who was the RB2 in his class, a mid RB1 in Dynasty, and a guy in redraft that we think towards the end of the year can be an absolute monster. It's only been 4 weeks. Just breathe. When it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs, again, I am not selling. I am not panicking. Am I, putting him further down in the week 5 running back ranking? Sure. But over the entire season, when it comes to rest of season rankings, I'm not budging a ton when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about, or not the last thing here, but the 9th takeaway we have is the Akers and the Kamara debuts. Now, when we talk about Alvin Kamara, it's worth noting, especially with the Saints in general, it was a tough day for the Saints because Derek Carr comes back from injury. He's clearly not right, and he was awful. I think you can sort of chalk up like Chris Olave having a down game on Derek Carr here. 0.4 air yards per completion, lowest number tracked by Next Gen Stats since week 6 of last year. 12.2 completion percentage below expectation. That's awful. More than half his completions came behind the line of scrimmage. Derek Carr was not himself this week. He was absolutely awful, and that's just because he rushed back from this injury when Jameis Winston could have been absolutely fine there. Now, when we look at Alvin Kamara's usage in the utilization report, Alvin Kamara, I mean, his role is juicy, man. It is juicy. I mean, he played, and this is just his first week back, 75% of the snaps, 61% of the rush attempts. That's massive. Anything over like 55%, 60% is amazing. 71% of the routes, amazing. 37% targets. I mean, it's unsustainable, but it's amazing. 80% of the short down and distance snaps. There was no inside the 5 stuff. He got 54% of long down and distance. He was the 2-minute drill guy. I believe that's 21 PPR points as the 9th best RB on the week. I mean, Alvin Kamara, fellas, is probably a rest of season RB1 as it stands. I mean, he came in there and looked absolutely, I mean, just in terms of the usage, I don't mean to say that he looked amazing on the field because I can't say I watched a ton of that Saints game. But I mean, 11 carries, 51 rushing yards. He had 14 targets for 13 catches and 33 receiving yards. Now, that's, of course, sort of inflated by the Derek Carr injury, but that's at least telling us the role moving forward is amazing. He's going to run the ball. He's going to be catching the ball. He's going to be out there as almost like a bell cow type running back, and that's absolutely huge. Or if we look back to 2022, like I don't think he had that same usage. Or if we look back to last year, Kamara was hovering. Yeah, so I mean, he had like 70% of the rush attempts. He's like 52% here. Routes were still great. But it really was, I mean, 20% of the inside the 5 stuff. Yeah, like he's getting used in a better way this year. I think some of that's due to a lack of other options, right, where Jamal Williams is hurt. Kendrick Miller is kind of iffy. But yeah, I'd be very excited. I know that the numbers were inflated this week because of the Derek Carr injury and like him just doing a bunch of checkdowns, but Alvin Kamara's role, of course, 13 targets aren't going to stick, or 13 catches aren't going to stick, but you should feel very confident moving forward. Now, we also have another backfield I want to look at was the Vikings with Cam Akers coming into the mix here. If we look at the Vikings, let's just look at like the last 2 weeks. Alvin Kamara goes from 79% of the snaps to 66%, 87% rush attempts to 74%. Targets go way down. Short down and distance stuff goes down. Splits the inside the 5 work. What else can we see here? Long down and distance. So Alexander Madison still the pass catching back. So Alexander Madison, I mean, this is the first game. I imagine the split only gets worse for Alexander Madison. But it wouldn't shock me if this kind of stuck. I mean, Alexander Madison had a good game, 95 rushing yards on 17 attempts. I think it's kind of better that he just has somebody to take some of the load off. Akers, Akers was actually sort of efficient here. 5 carries, 40 yards. That's 8 yards per carry. He had 2 catches for 11 yards. So, yeah, I mean, this could become even more of a split. I mean, again, this was Akers' first game. He had 32% of the snaps. This could become like a 60-40 split, a 55-45 split. We'll kind of see how things go. But I think that it's a small little downgrade from Alexander Madison with upside for it to be a big downgrade over the entire season. And then Cam Akers, I don't know, probably exactly where you thought he was. Now, Ty Chandler didn't play snaps at all in week 4, so he gets a huge downgrade. You can now drop Ty Chandler. We'll also cover, I know people want me to talk about Rhamondre Stevenson. I forgot to write him down, but I'll cover him now just real quick. Rhamondre Stevenson, I mean, 65% of the snaps down to 64%. Like, he's still the lead back. All of the reports of Zeke Elliott being the starter were false. Rush attempts, 67%. That's still great. That's actually more than he's been at over his entire season, 55%. Routes came down, but over the entire year, still around 60%. Targets are fine. Like, the usage has been fine. This was just an absolutely brutal game versus the Cowboys. I do think better days are ahead. I mean, maybe this offense keeps Rhamondre in the like high-end RB2 area, but I don't know. I wouldn't panic too much when it comes to Rhamondre. I think that this says that he's RB24 on the entire season at this point, but yeah, I mean, it was just sort of a It was a tough game script. He still had 17 opportunities. Last week, he had 23 opportunities. The week before that, he had 18 opportunities. The week before that, he had 18 opportunities. So the points haven't been coming. And I think it is reasonable to say and be concerned that the efficiency hasn't been there this year. But we've seen over an entire sample that he has shown efficiency before, where he's shown a lot of juice and a lot of breakaway runs and missed tackles for us. So I think some of it's small sample. I think some of it's that he's played now. You have to remember as well, fellas. You have to remember, through these first 4 games, he has played the Eagles, the Jets, and the Cowboys. Those are 3 of the top, 5 to 10 defenses in the entire NFL. Things do begin to lighten up here, where he gets New Orleans next week, Las Vegas after that. Buffalo is tough, but Buffalo is actually a good pass defense, but a fine run defense. Washington's a little bit tough. Then he has Indianapolis. So things should lighten up here, right? Where like the defensive fronts of Philly, the Jets, and Dallas are nightmarish. So better days do feel like they're ahead for Rhamondre Stevenson. I wouldn't freak out too much just yet, but sort of like Calvin Ridley, where maybe we thought top 5 running back was in the range of outcomes for Rhamondre. Maybe he's more of a fringe RB1 now, and that's fine. That's not a complete bust where you drafted him. Now our final lesson learned here is the Jets' new look offense. I won't bore you guys with a bunch of Jets talk here. It was a good game on Sunday night. A little bit annoyed with the officiating, but it did go both ways, right? We got a lucky horse collar, we got a lucky safety call. End of the game, I just think it was so crazy. The 3rd and 22, Jermaine Johnson clearly held, and then you have the Sauce Gardner ticky-tack play where the ref didn't even throw the flag until it was an interception. He didn't do it at the time of the hold. I don't know, just a little bit wonky there. Regardless, I can't expect to beat Patrick Mahomes in a game ever, really, with Zach Wilson at quarterback. It just can't really happen. But we did get, Zach Wilson had the best game of his entire career as a pro in the NFL. 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, he's out there absolutely slinging it. And the Jets, for once, this is the big takeaway. So the Jets didn't shield him. This is what they've been doing since he was a rookie, where you would see these huge splits where with Joe Flacco last year, they would be top 5 in pass attempts per game, and then Zach Wilson would come in and they'd be bottom 5 in pass attempts per game, just running a really slow offense, trying to hide him, trying to let the defense catch their breath, trying to run the ball. And they just let him loose last night, which was cool. I wish that we could have a little bit more of a balance, right, where we have more Breece Hall rushes, more rushes overall, and we could run the ball. I mean, we never really established the run at all outside of that one big Breece Hall game, which I'll say. I mean, we'll just have this as a all-encompassing Jets segment here. I think Breece Hall is going to get more usage here. We have a really light matchup against the Broncos. It wouldn't shock me at all if versus the Broncos, this was Breece Hall's coming out party, because now the Jets are starting to see the other side of what was a really tough schedule early on as well, where they had, their easiest game through the first 4 games was the Patriots, where the Patriots got dogged by the Cowboys, but so has kind of everybody besides the Cardinals. But they had the Bills, who just shut down the Dolphins. They had the Chiefs, who of course had Mahomes. Before that, they had the Cowboys. So, this is, an absolute brutal stretch of defenses, but things do lighten up here. They got the Broncos this week. Breece Hall, they're going to start getting him more touches. Again, just like Gibbs, we didn't draft Breece Hall for early season. We drafted him for mid to late season, and we're not there yet. We're just simply not there yet. Touches are going to ramp up here. He's going to, Dalvin Cook posts 0 threat at this point. So it's simply just once the knee is completely 100% correct, and if this offense looks anything like it did with the Chiefs, big upgrades to everybody, which is nice, but I don't know how to feel about moving forward, because I think on one hand, that was really promising from Zach Wilson last night. On the other hand, it takes a string of bad plays for him to be the worst quarterback in the NFL again. Now, if we get this environment, though, where the Jets allow him to play quarterback, right, where their neutral pass rate over the first 3 weeks went from the 29th in the NFL to 8th last night. Pass rate over expectation was -5%, then it was +8% last night. They passed 8% over what they were expected to, and then their offensive EPA per play went from 32nd the first 3 weeks to 18th. If this offense can have a neutral pass rate that's around league average, where they're not super run heavy, if everything can just be league average, if we can just have league average offensive efficiency, league average play volume, league average pass volume, then Garrett Wilson becomes a startable wide receiver 2. He had a ton of targets in this game. I think he had 13 targets. He had one. A couple of things that you can sort of get on Zach Wilson for was the fumble late in the game, of course. Then he had one go route to Garrett Wilson on a first down, and he just threw it too hard, and Garrett Wilson couldn't come down with it. But yeah, so if it wasn't for that, Garrett Wilson could have had a nice touchdown in the end zone there to sort of cap off his day. But I mean, this was good volume where he had 14 targets, 9 catches for 60 yards, 15 PPR points. I mean, you will take that. 14 targets is good. It's worth noting Garrett Wilson's had 8 or more targets in each of his last 3 games. So that's not terrible if Zach Wilson can look like if you can just go from stone worst quarterback in the NFL to fringe top 20, top 25 quarterback. I mean, we're going to be in business with just how consolidated things are around Garrett Wilson. But regardless, I'm cautiously optimistic moving forward. I do think that the Jets are going to do good against the Broncos, but over the entire season, we'll see. We'll see. I'm still scared of Zach Wilson. I mean, it's just one game. It's one single good game from Zach Wilson, so we'll truly see. But I do appreciate you guys watching. I do want to say as well, I almost did this today, but I didn't have time. We're probably going to try and switch around this video format because I end up spending so much more time. Like, I pretty much compile a bunch of takeaways and a bunch of lesson learns I liked, and I spend like an hour like whittling them down into 10 like confined ones, and then I'm like, oh, is everyone talking about that one? I don't want to cover that one. But then if I cover something too niche, it's like, oh, but there's important storylines you guys want to hear about. So I think what we're going to try next week is we're going to go game by game. I think we're going to start with the rookie wide receiver report up top, and then we're going to simply go game by game. Because if I could, instead of spending an hour whittling down my top 10 lessons learned choices and just, sit down at my desk and go game by game by game, I think I can actually get this video out a couple hours earlier for you guys. So be on the lookout for that. It shouldn't really change things too much. I might change the title, but it's going to be the same thing where I'm just going to go through my takeaways, my lessons learned, stuff that sticks out to me, and just a way where, I'll breeze through some teams and some matchups, but I want to have a format where I can cover everything because sometimes it's like, I don't know, it's like painstaking to sort of pick and choose what I want to cover. So just a small rant behind baseball stuff. You guys know how it is. Regardless, I appreciate you guys watching. As always, if you enjoyed, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm